The day my son cried at my feet, the kettle had already gone cold. It was still sitting on the stove, half full, whispering steam like it had something left to say. I remember thinking how strange it was, how even water knows when it's been forgotten. Just like me. I am telling you this story not because my heart is light now, but because it has been heavy for so long that silence started to feel like another kind of death. If you are listening, don't listen like it is someone else's pain. Listen like this is your house, your door, your child. Because that knock I heard this morning, it did not sound like forgiveness. It sounded like regret. I am an old woman. My hands shake when I hold a cup, my knees argue with every step, and my mirror stopped being kind to me years ago. But there was a time, long before the wrinkles, before the loneliness, when my son used to run into my arms like the world could not hurt him if I was standing there. He used to call me Amma in a voice so soft it could melt anger itself. I raised him alone. His father died when my son was 7. A sudden fever. 3 nights in a government hospital, 1 silent morning, and then a white sheet pulled over a man who had promised me a lifetime. From that day on, my son became my prayer, my punishment, and my purpose, all at once. I worked houses that were not mine. I washed dishes that still smelled of other people's food. I slept 4 hours so he could sleep 8. Every bruise on my back, I told myself, was shaping his future. When he grew older, people told me, "You've raised a good boy." I believed them. I needed to believe them. But goodness, I learned too late, can be temporary. The first time he spoke to me with anger, I laughed. I actually laughed. He was 17, taller than me now, voice cracking with something new, something sharp. I had asked him where he was going so late. He looked at me like I had insulted him. "Stop controlling my life," he said. The words were small. The wound was not. Still, I laughed. I said, "Go. Just come back safe." I did not know that was the beginning of goodbye. Years passed. He studied. He earned. He changed. And I stayed the same house, same cracked walls, same morning prayers whispered into a ceiling that never answered back. The more successful he became, the quieter I became in his life. My calls went unanswered. My advice became interference. My concern became drama. One day, during a festival, he came home late. I had waited with food untouched. When I asked him why he didn't call, he didn't even look at me. "You don't have a life, that's why you don't understand," he said. That night, I ate alone. That night, I cried without sound. That night, I learned how humiliation can live inside love. Then came the day he left. Not with luggage. Not with a goodbye. Just absence. His room stayed the same. His shoes stayed by the door for weeks. Neighbors asked questions I pretended not to hear. When I finally called him, he answered like I was a stranger who had dialed the wrong number. "I've moved out," he said. "Don't make this difficult." Difficult. As if raising him hadn't been difficult. As if letting him go wasn't tearing my chest open. After that, the torture was quieter, but deeper. He would visit rarely. When he did, he corrected the way I spoke, the food I cooked, the clothes I wore. Once, in front of guests, he said, "You're embarrassing me. Why can't you behave modern?" Modern. I wanted to ask him if abandoning your mother was modern too. But old women learn something important. Silence keeps what little dignity you have left. So I stayed silent. Days turned into years. Birthdays passed without calls. Illness came without support. I learned how to sit with pain like it was an old friend. I learned how to talk to God like He was the only one who still listened. And then, today happened. This morning, when I heard the knock, I wasn't expecting anyone. No festival. No appointment. Just another quiet day waiting to die politely. I opened the door slowly. And there he was. My son. But not the man who had walked away so confidently. This man looked smaller. His shoulders were bent. His eyes, those eyes I once kissed every night, were swollen, red, and full of something I had never seen in them before. Fear. He didn't speak. He just stood there, breathing like he had run a long way to reach me. I should have said something. Anything. But before I could, his knees touched the floor. And my son, my proud, distant, untouchable son, started crying like a child who had finally realized he was lost. That is where I will stop for now. Because what happened next, what he confessed, what I felt in that moment, it changed everything I thought I knew about love, pain, and forgiveness. When my son fell to the floor, I did not move. Not because I was cruel, not because I didn't care, but because every tear he shed felt like it was asking me a question I didn't know how to answer. Can a mother forgive before she understands? The house felt smaller with him kneeling there. The walls, which had listened to my prayers for years, now listened to his sobs. His shoulders shook like a boy's, not a man's. I noticed how thin his hair had become, how tired his face looked. Success had not been kind to him. "Amma," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Please, listen to me." That word, Amma, had been missing from my life for so long that hearing it felt like reopening a wound just to check if it still hurt. I sat down slowly on the chair near the door. My knees could not hold me anymore, but my heart had been holding too much for years. "Stand up," I said. He didn't. "I don't deserve to," he replied. Those words, they were sharp and soft at the same time. I asked him why he had come. He wiped his face with the back of his hand, like he used to when he was a child caught doing something wrong. For a moment, I almost reached out to fix his collar. Almost. "I ruined my life," he said. I waited. Silence is powerful when you've been ignored for years. It forces the other person to fill it. "I thought leaving you would make me free," he continued. "I thought you were holding me back. Every call, every question. I felt trapped. I was ashamed of our house, of our life, of you." There it was. The truth always hurts more when it's finally spoken. He looked at me, waiting for anger, for shouting, for tears. I gave him none. So he went on. "I moved to the city. I got the job, the apartment, the friends. I married without telling you because I didn't want your old thinking to interfere." He laughed bitterly. "I thought I was smarter than you." I remembered the wedding I was never invited to, the photos I saw on someone else's phone, the sweets I distributed to neighbors so they wouldn't ask why I wasn't there. I said nothing. "She left me," he said suddenly. That made me look up. 2 months ago," he continued. "She said I don't know how to love anyone. She said I only care about myself. That I treat people the way I treated my mother." His voice cracked again. "She told me I would end up alone. Just like you. That sentence finally broke something inside me. I stood up. Not to slap him. Not to scream. But to speak the words I had swallowed for years. Alone? I asked quietly. You think I was alone? He looked confused. I had you, I said. Even when you didn't have me. My voice trembled now. I couldn't stop it. I stayed alive on the hope that one day you would need me again. Do you know what it feels like to wait for a child who never comes? To cook food that goes cold. To fall sick and pray you don't die because no one will notice. His crying turned into something uglier. Guilt has a sound. It is not loud. It is heavy. I didn't know, he whispered. You didn't want to know, I corrected him. He nodded, over and over. Then he told me the part he had been avoiding. The night his wife left, he had called everyone. Friends, colleagues, even distant relatives. No one came. No one stayed. When his phone battery died, he sat alone on the floor of a house that felt like a hotel room. And for the first time in his life, he felt fear. Not of failure, but of being unloved. That night, he said, I remembered you, sitting alone, waiting. And I realized I had turned into the person I hated most. He looked up at me with eyes full of shame. I came to ask for forgiveness, he said. But I know I don't deserve it. I looked at this man, my son, who had once been my entire world. And for the first time, I asked myself a dangerous question. If I forgive him, will I lose myself again? Outside, the kettle whistled sharply. I had forgotten it. Water boiled away when no one listens. Just like love. I turned off the stove and poured the water out. Then I made 2 cups of tea. I placed one in front of him. He stared at it like it was something sacred. I am not forgiving you today, I said. His face fell. But I am listening, I continued. And that is more than you gave me for years. He nodded, tears dropping into the cup. Stay, I said finally. Not as my son who demands forgiveness, but as a man who must earn it. He didn't answer. He just folded his hands and stayed. That night, my son slept on the floor. Not because I told him to, but because he did not feel worthy of the bed he once owned. I watched him from the doorway for a long time. The same child who used to crawl into my arms during thunderstorms now lay curled like the world had finally become too loud for him. Age does not prepare a mother for this. Seeing your child broken by the very life you prayed would be kind to them. I did not sleep. Forgiveness is heavy work. It asks questions your heart avoids. In the early morning, before the azan rose from the mosque, I sat on the prayer mat. I did not ask God to fix my son. I asked him to protect my heart, because loving him again felt dangerous. When my son woke up, his eyes searched the room like he was afraid I had disappeared. That fear told me something had changed. I handed him a broom. He looked confused. If you want to stay, I said, you will live like a son again. Not a guest. Not a king. This house raised you once. Let it raise you properly now. He swept the floor with shaking hands. Every movement looked like an apology. When he cooked breakfast, he burned the roti. We ate it anyway. Pain, I have learned, does not need perfection. It needs honesty. Days passed. Not magically. Not easily. Some mornings, I remembered every insult, every ignored call. Every night I cried into my pillow so the neighbors wouldn't hear. On those days I spoke little, and he noticed. One evening while washing dishes, he said softly, "I don't expect you to forget." "I won't," I replied. "I don't expect you to forgive me quickly either." "I won't," I said again. He nodded. And for the first time in his life, he didn't argue. Weeks later, a neighbor asked him, "Why did you come back?" He answered without looking at me, "Because I finally understood what I lost." That night, he sat beside me and said something that surprised us both. "I used to think respect comes from success," he said. "Now I know it comes from humility." I looked at him then, not as the child I raised, not as the man who hurt me, but as someone learning to be human. Forgiveness did not arrive like a miracle. It came like a habit, in small moments. When he filled my medicine box without being asked. When he waited for me to eat before touching his food. When he said Oma again, not out of need, but out of love. One afternoon, he broke down again. "I can't undo the years I hurt you," he said, "but I will spend the rest of my life making sure you are never alone again." That promise scared me, because promises are easy. Consistency is not. So I tested him. I sent him away for small errands. I delayed my responses. I watched. And he stayed. Not for praise. Not for forgiveness. But because this time, he chose me. The day I finally forgave him, I didn't announce it. I simply rested my head on his shoulder while watching the evening sky. He froze. Then slowly, he placed his hand over mine, like he used to when he was little and afraid of the dark. "Oma," he whispered, "have I hurt you too much?" I closed my eyes. "Yes," I said. "But pain does not mean the end of love." He cried again. But this time, his tears were quiet, grateful. If you are listening to my story, I want you to hear this carefully. Children do not realize the weight of a mother's love until life makes them carry their own. And mothers, we forgive not because our children deserve it, but because our hearts were built to survive love's worst storms. My son did not come back perfect, but he came back honest. And sometimes, that is enough to begin again.